What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the One More Rep podcast. You're hearing this from YouTube, so I would ask you to do me a favor. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get this off the ground, and so that would be a big help. Like the video, leave me a comment, share it with a friend, share it on social media. All that is greatly appreciated. Um, a lot of you have probably previously watched the Thinking Man's podcast. I used to do that with Tommy Styles. We used to bring that to you from the Muscle Media Network. The link for that channel will be below. I offer online coaching. The link to my website and my Instagram will be below as well. So I'm going to be hosting this mostly as a solo podcast, a solo project. I do expect to have guests on. I've already reached out to a few people that I think you guys will like to hear from. Um, but for the time being, I also don't want to rely on anyone else. So I'm going to be hosting this mostly as a Q&A format by myself. So with that said, I'm going to jump right into it. I got a handful of questions from Instagram, and like I said, my link to my Instagram will be below. That's where I'm going to be fielding questions. So if you guys want your question answered, that would be the best place to get in touch with me. There was a few in the initial group that I got that were based around arm training. So I'm going to group those together and answer those first. Someone asked, can you explain your current approach or philosophy with arm training? So right now I'm currently in a cruise. I had a long contest prep. I continued on cycle after into a rebound phase. I did 9 weeks of a rebound. And since then, I've pulled back PEDs, pulled back food, pulled back training volume, pulled back training frequency. And as part of that, I'm only training 4 days a week. So, with all that said, one of those 4 days is dedicated solely to arms. Um, Last year, I had a long off season going into the contest prep that I just recently finished, and arms were a priority then. And I tried a few different things. I was training them in a separate session away from my push pull legs. So, for example, most guys do biceps with back. I would go in the morning and just do biceps and then come back and do the back work later at night. You know, chest and delts would be their own session. And then that morning I would do triceps. I did that for a while. I tried basically doing arms every time I was in the gym. So, regardless of what the main session was, even if it was legs, the first thing that I would do was 3 or 4 sets of either biceps or triceps. All that worked. And starting my contest prep, I definitely had improved my arms. They were taping bigger than ever. And I did multiple shows. I prepped for 10 months. The first show that I did was in April, and I wasn't quite as lean as I needed to be, but the size improvements were pretty evident. That was where I felt like I really displayed the progress that I had made. And then I continued dieting all the way up into August and competed down here at the Tampa show. And by then, after dieting for so long, I could see that my arms had withered a little bit. So right now, even being in a cruise, I'm dedicating a full training session just to arms. I'm not doing side delts with it. I'm not doing a chest press. I'm not doing one pull down and then arms. It's just arms. Um, but all of those different things that I talked about, I think can improve your arms. I think the biggest thing, regardless of how you approach it in the training, is that they just need to be treated as a priority. I think a lot of guys end up a few years into training and they look up and their arms are behind or their arms aren't as big as they want them to be. And it's just because they've been thought of or treated as an afterthought. A lot of guys are doing push pull legs, which is cool. Push pull legs is good. Um, but I mean, if you think about it, like if you're training your back, traps, and rear delts, and then at the end, you're just doing a couple sets of biceps, like a couple thoughts on that. Like, one, how much mental focus can you really put in after you've just, killed all those other body parts for 90 minutes? Um, and then how effective is that volume really going to be? How much volume can you even do? I have found that the arms, when you choose good exercises that line up and work for you, things that don't hurt your elbows, don't give you tendonitis, the arms seem to respond better to a little bit higher volume. It's not like they're super taxed or super fatiguing the way that doing a ton of quad volume or a ton of back volume would be. Um, so I think a good approach, if you've never done something like this before, would be to spread quite a bit of arm volume out over 3 or 4 sessions over the course of a week. So like I said, almost training arms every time you're in the gym. And one way that you could do this is, if you're going to do some arm work on leg day, I would do that first. Your leg training should be completely unaffected, and it doesn't take much of a mental toll to do some arms first. And then if you're doing like push pull legs, you could do the reverse of what you would normally do. That way you can put the dedicated arm work first. So, for example, you could do your triceps and then go into your back workout. Or on the flip side, you could do your biceps and then go into your chest and shoulders. So, something like that could work. Interestingly enough, a separate question that I got that I'm just going to group in here was someone asking about exactly what I had mentioned previously, which was the 2-a-days where you do arms in an AM session, AM in the morning, and then your main PM session. And it did work for me. I felt like even if there was no change or additional volume happening, I was just getting more from the volume I was doing, because for that morning session, that's all I was doing. It might only be 4 sets of curls. It might only be one exercise, but I really made it a point to just give all my mental focus and energy into like making those like Dorian Yates worthy sets, um, and just squeezing the most out of them. Now that's also going to depend, on your schedule, on your lifestyle. I was doing that at a point where, I'm coaching full time online, so I make my own schedule. I don't have anywhere to be in the morning, or, anywhere to physically be schedule wise. Um, and at the time, I was living in an apartment complex that had, kind of like a smaller apartment gym. And let's say they had dumbbells up to 50 pounds and a couple of cable setups. That's all that I really needed for arms. So, this apartment gym complex kind of took whatever mental toll it would take, or time, or whatever the case is, of just driving to the gym twice. It wasn't even like I was actually going to the gym twice a day. I was only going to my real gym once a day in the afternoon. But I would just walk up to the apartment gym complex, hit some arms, come back, eat another meal, eat a couple meals, and then go and really train. So it just depends. Even if your life allows for this, I found that I couldn't really sustain that. I would only really be able to do it in 3 or 4 week blocks. And then just the mental toll of training twice per day caught up to me, I should say, eventually. And then I'm going to touch on this exact topic later, but on the topic of deloads, like I felt like I was running into a point where I needed either a deload or some time off at the 3 or 4 week mark, which usually, if your programming is good and like, you're working with a coach that's doing your programming, your PEDs, your food, your sleep is good, like all that stuff, like you shouldn't be running into the need for time off from the gym so frequently. Like, 1 week out of every 4 needing time off or time with suboptimal training, I just don't think that's good programming. So that kind of leads me into the next question here. There was a question on deloads. Deload opinions and current philosophy. So for a while, I tried the almost like RP style training, and it helped. I did improve during that time. I'm not going to lie and say that I didn't. And also some of the general ideas I think helped shape my current training philosophy for myself, because I just simply wasn't doing enough volume for certain body parts. Like I talked about, I think the arms can handle a little bit more if they're not growing at the same rate as everything else. And for sure, my shoulders were not, I was not doing enough volume. And they can handle quite a bit, I found. So, like again, that like Dorian Yates high intensity, very, very low volume, like 1 or 2 sets per exercises. It might work for some people for all their body parts. For me, that has worked for my legs and pretty much for my back. I don't do a ton of volume for my back, and it's improved quite a bit. But doing 1 or 2 sets per exercise for arms, side delts, rear delts, that just didn't work for me. I just had small arms and delts, and I started doing more volume because of the RP style training, and they improved for sure. Now, one thing that I don't necessarily agree with on that style of training, and this does relate back to the deload question, I don't believe in needing to ramp up volume and essentially like chase down a deload. I'm not trying to chase down a deload or chasing down that feeling of needing time off from the gym. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think, you know, running and running until you smash your head into the wall, volume wise, is needed. Like there are so many other variables that we can use to progress that aren't going to cost as much as continuous and predictive volume increases. Like, you can add more load, you can get more reps, you can time and slightly lessen your rest times, your tempos can improve, just general execution can improve. So all of those things can be a means of like progressive stimulus, more so than just the need to add more volume every session, every week, until your face smashes into the wall. I'm not a believer in that. I don't think that that's needed or beneficial. And then so that leads me to this idea on deloads. I definitely use them at certain points and had recommended them to certain people. And the longer that I'm in this, the more clients that I work with, the bigger and more advanced that I get. I have just found that when you get to that point where it feels like you almost hate going to the gym, it feels like a chore, your performance has gotten worse, your pumps have gotten worse, even as maybe you do more, or you're eating more, all of those signs that the people that believe in deloading would point to a deload. I just think at that point, taking time off from the gym is the quickest way to get back into a state of being well recovered and enjoying the process again. Like, if you feel like going to the gym is a chore, and then you're going to go to the gym and do like a half-ass workout, for lack of a better way of putting it, I don't think that that's helping your recovery as much as just time away from the gym. Um, when I run into a wall like that, and because my programming is good, my sleep schedule and these other things are usually good, that's not that often. It might only be every 7 or 8 weeks. And at that point, I'll take 3 or 4 days straight off from the gym. And then usually by day 3 or 4, the night before, I'm stoked. I'm excited to go to the gym. And that's how I know when I'm ready. Now there's definitely been a couple times, especially like coming out of that really long prep, and then I was really on the money for the whole rebound process too. Right as that came to an end, and right as I started a cruise, I took 5 straight days off from the gym because I had planned on like taking 3, and by day 3 I was like, man, I still don't want anything to do with going to the gym. Day 4, even, I was like, nope, I'm not excited at the thought of going to the gym. And then that night going into day 5, I was like, maybe tomorrow. And I woke up and it still wasn't happening. So I took 5 days off. And then when I returned, I was excited. My pumps were crazy immediately. And, that's how I knew it was the right call. So, for me, for anyone that's even like, I would say um, intermediate or advanced person, I would say just time away from the gym more so than going in and doing like half-ass workouts. This guy asked, get show lean and rebound versus extended off seasons with mini cuts for most growth long term. My opinions on this have changed over time. I've gone back and forth with them. I've done both scenarios where I've competed frequently. I did a really long off season, and I don't have a black and white answer. So I think there's a time and a place for both situations. I think for somebody that's maybe a little bit younger and really needing to take a leap in terms of size, um, like let's say, in my case, I'm a taller guy, and in 2021, I competed as a light heavyweight, and the week of my show, I was between 189 and 192. So that's really small, point blank, way, way undersized. So I took a long off season. I took the better part of 3 years to grow. And then I came back in April of this year, 2024, and I weighed in right at the top of heavyweight, right at like 224. So that was a scenario where it was needed and it was productive. I made the most of that time. I think a lot of people, I wouldn't really recommend like 3 years or even 2 years away from the stage for most people, because most people are going to lose the excitement about the process. They're going to lose structure to their everyday life, their everyday programming, and how bodybuilding fits into it. And that's just normal. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say like you're not hardcore if that's the case. Like that's just totally normal. I think everyone gets excited when it's time to diet or switch phases or whatever the case is. So, I mean, if you're someone that needs to take a leap and take a long off season, I would say something like 18 months, where maybe you only need one or two little quick mini diets in between. Um, but there's no doubt about it. I've preached the idea of a long off season, especially for younger people, but there is quite a bit of progress to be made by getting show lean and then rebounding. Now, given that your health isn't a wreck coming out of a prep, um, and the big one is just going to be diet adherence and discipline with your diet. So for me, like this most recent show prep, I went through it for 10 months, and then I just decided, you know what, I still need to be bigger. I still need to make a leap. And I treated my rebound from, especially the first 6 weeks of it, I treated it like it was contest prep. I didn't go out to eat. I didn't go out to dinner. Um, I wasn't snacking. I wasn't even picking at little things. Like every single thing was tracked and on plan. So, if you know that you know you can do that, then absolutely, like you're someone that can take advantage of rebounds more frequently. If you're someone that just falls off the rails, and I've been there after the show. I mean, my first show, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I had a terrible rebound. I put on like 40 pounds in a week. And that's a good way to kind of just ruin the rebound and then start your off season on a shitty foot. So um, there's a time and a place for both situations, but I think younger guys that need to take a really big leap in size, could consider taking a longer off season, because it takes a lot of resources to get in really good contest shape, both in terms of time, energy, and of course money. Um, but then I think if you're a little bit further along, or you do have like a lot of the size that you need, or if you have really good shape, those guys get away with having less actual scale weight, those are guys that could probably compete more frequently and then take advantage of a good rebound. Go over my training now with the 4 days a week and what will it be after the cruise. So I'll just make this quick right now. My 4 training days are back and hams, chest and delts. I have an arm day, and then I have a leg day, which is like mostly quads and glutes. Um, and I think when I get back on cycle and start to push the food back up, push my body weight back up, it would be quads as their own day, hams and glutes as their own day, back day, a chest and delt day, and an arm day. Big priorities for me this coming off season are my arms, and I want to get back to having like really standout legs from all angles, like not just my quads. So that's why I really am going to make it a point to have a dedicated ham and glute day. Okay, I got a group of questions again that were kind of all asking about like volume recommendations and, is X number of sets enough for this body part, and who should be doing low volume, who shouldn't be. And again, I think it just depends on where you've been, how far into this are you, and what has worked so far for you. Um, but I also think that training is a skill that you learn and improve at over time. So some of these like very, very low volume totals that we hear about or see from our favorite bodybuilders, Dorian Yates, even in years, recent years, like Nick Walker has become very low volume. Justin Shire is a guy that preaches low volume. All that is great. But I would think about it like those guys are masters at training. They've mastered training. So with that, they can get away with much less. They've also built most of the size that they're going to need. So again, they can get away with doing less. They're not on this like aggressive pursuit of a huge leap in muscularity. I think I think like early beginners are going to grow from anything and everything. So it doesn't make sense to empty the clip volume wise. But then once you kind of grow into early to like early intermediate to slightly advanced or almost advanced intermediate, that might be the kind of middle portion of your journey where it makes sense to do a little bit more volume because you're probably not going to be crazy strong. So like the fatigue cost, let's say, is not going to be huge. Again, you don't have a ton of muscle, so it's not like there's tons of muscular damage and like there's a ton of muscle fibers that are getting broken down and need to recover. That's not really the case. And also, you might not be a master of training. Your execution might not be flawless with heavy weights. In fact, it's not going to be. That's literally why you would be considered an intermediate, is that you're not super advanced yet. So that kind of middle portion of your journey, let's say it could be anywhere from, you know, you get serious about bodybuilding and training, and you're eating on a meal plan, you have structured training programming, maybe you're using PEDs, your sleep is a priority. From year 1 to year 3, you're probably going to get away with less. Like those are going to be like the years of your new gains. But then from, let's say, and this is just like a rough estimate, guys, don't take this like these numbers to heart, but like your 3rd year of all of that to maybe like your 6th or 7th year of all that, that's probably going to be like the middle part of your journey where you're going to need to do more volume to make sure you continue to grow. Now, once you get into year 7, 8, 10, that kind of range, you're probably pretty advanced, and you're going to have an idea of which body parts are going to require more and maybe which body parts require less. Like your best one or two body parts have responded that way, and you can probably get away with a little bit less. And then there might be other body parts, like I've talked about my delts, my arms, my chest, even, that are just going to need more to grow. All right, I'm going to do two more. I'm going to keep these brief mostly. I think when I have a guest on, I'll probably keep them to about an hour. But these Q&A ones, I want to keep the attention of the audience, and I don't want these to drag on, being that you're only hearing the one voice. So I'm going to do two more. And again, I'm trying to answer questions and give answers that provide value to you guys within your own bodybuilding journey. So I'm not necessarily going to like comment on the latest bodybuilding drama or any of these things, or even like, show coverage, stuff like that. I'm not sure. I mean, you guys can comment below, and let me know if you guys want to hear my opinions on that stuff. You know, those of you that know me know I'm very opinionated. I have no problem doing it, but I also don't know how much value that provides to the average listener. So questions like this next one, I probably won't do a ton of, but um, subject to change. Let me know what you think. This guy asked, do you think that the Arnold will ever surpass the Olympia in prestige? And that's a pretty good question. From my perspective, I don't think that it ever could pass it. I don't think that Arnold could generate enough of a difference in terms of like the prize money. Um, I think that they are. I kind of, just as a diehard bodybuilding fan, I've always kind of just thought about them as two separate things. Um, and I could try to make like a sports comparison to this, but it's really difficult. Like, they always say that the Olympia is the Super Bowl of bodybuilding because that's like the final game, right? Like that's like the championship. Um, and that Sandow trophy is, that's what everyone is after. And even the title of Mr. Olympia, I don't think that there's anything that's ever going to surpass that. But the Arnold has its own level of prestige as its own like separate exhibition, I would say. It's almost like an all-star game, or um yeah, I mean, I guess an all-star game is like a decent comparison to it. Like it says a lot about where you are as a bodybuilder, and it's awesome to watch as a fan, but it doesn't compare to winning the Super Bowl. So to me, I don't think so. I think it's always going to be like the number two show, or even if you wanted to put like a ranking on it, it's like 1B, but the Olympia will always be number one. So um, that's how I view it, at least. Okay, last one. Why do I see so many competitors only eating carbs and fat on show day and no protein? And when I read this, I thought this was interesting because I actually don't see very many competitors at all doing this, but I have done this quite often with clients. Um, I actually almost never see guys excluding protein on show day. And I've always kind of wondered to myself, like, why do we have, like, in most situations, like, why are we including protein at all? Now, it depends on what time the show is, when you're going on stage. Are we talking about before prejudging or before finals? Um, but just to answer the question, why would someone do that? Just carbs and fats, no protein. Um, a big part of that would be digestion. You're going to need carbs, salt, and water to fill the muscle out. Make sure it's full and pushed up against the skin to show the conditioning. You could bring fats in to kind of hold that look, slow the digestion down, slow the blood sugar, keep the blood sugar a little bit elevated so that you keep that fullness. And the protein wouldn't really be needed because you're not, it's just one day, you're not going to lose muscle moments before you walk on stage. And then also, this would be a good tactic with someone that either you're trying to avoid stomach distension or stomach distension has been an issue, because like proteins can kind of sit around a little bit in the gut. And then also just like from a digestion standpoint, like if it makes someone burpy, bloated, I know this happens with guys that avoid red meat the entire prep and then use red meat in their peak week, and then you start to see stomach distension, or that they report that they're bloated, or um, even struggling to pass a bowel movement. So there's definitely plenty of merit in the idea of only using carbs and fats the morning of or the day of the show. Uh, so that's everything, guys. Thanks for anybody that checked this out. Like I said, I'm just getting this going, trying to get this off the ground. So if you hear this and you like it, please subscribe to the channel, maybe share it up on social media, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Leave me a question for next time. Hit me up on Instagram and let me know what you want to hear. And until next time, guys, I am out.